The barbecue smoke was still rising from my Weber when my wife offered to trade me to our neighbor for a bottle of wine. Everyone laughed. I didn't. "Come on, Dave," Marta said, her voice carrying that fake cheerfulness she used when she wanted to embarrass me in public. "Rachel's been eyeing you all afternoon. Maybe she'd appreciate what I've got here." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The circle of neighbors chuckled nervously. Rachel Matthews, our recently divorced next-door neighbor, raised her glass of Chardonnay with a smirk. "Depends on the warranty," she shot back. "Does he come with a satisfaction guarantee?" More laughter. I flipped another burger, the sizzle matching the burn in my chest. This is what passes for foreplay in my house. Public humiliation, disguised as suburban banter. "Dave's very reliable," Marta continued, warming to her audience. "Steady income, does his own laundry, and he's house-trained. What more could a girl want?" I looked at my wife of 18 years, Marta Heller, 41, executive at Morrison & Associates advertising agency, still beautiful in that polished, professional way that made other husbands jealous. Her auburn hair caught the late afternoon sun, and she wore that little black sundress that used to drive me crazy. Now, it just reminded me of how long it had been since she'd dressed up for me instead of everyone else. "The trade offer stands," Rachel said, winking at me, "but I'd want a test drive first." The crowd erupted. Bob and Susan from across the street nearly spilled their beers. Even Tony Ricci, my buddy from work, was grinning like an idiot. But I caught something in Marta's eyes. A flicker of something that wasn't amusement. Calculation, maybe. Or relief. "Careful what you wish for," I said, finally speaking up. "You might just get it." The laughter died down, and I felt the subtle shift in the group's energy. Marta's smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. "Dave's such a kidder," she said, moving closer and placing her hand on my arm. The gesture looked affectionate to the others, but her grip was tight enough to leave marks. "He knows he's stuck with me." I looked down at her manicured fingers on my forearm. When had her touch started feeling like a trap instead of a comfort? When had her laugh become a sound that made me want to leave the room? The party continued around us, but I was somewhere else, watching my marriage like a movie I'd seen too many times. The plot was predictable, the ending inevitable, and I was just waiting for the credits to roll. After the last neighbor stumbled home and I'd finished cleaning the grill, I found Marta in our bedroom, removing her jewelry at the vanity. She caught my eye in the mirror. "You were quiet tonight," she said. "Just thinking." "About what Rachel said?" There was something in her tone, not jealousy, but something sharper, almost hopeful. "Among other things." She turned to face me, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I'd married, the one who used to laugh at my jokes instead of making me the punchline, the one who used to touch me like she meant it. "Dave, we need to talk." Those 4 words, the relationship death knell. I sat on the edge of our bed. When had I started thinking of it as our bed instead of just the bed? And waited. "I've been thinking about us," she continued, "about what we want, what we need." "And what do you think we need?" "Space, maybe. Time to figure out who we are outside of this." She gestured vaguely around the room, encompassing 18 years of shared life, 2 kids who were now in college, a mortgage, and 1,000 small compromises that had worn us down to nothing. "You mean a separation?" "I mean honesty. About what this has become." I looked at her, really looked. The woman who used to curl up against me during thunderstorms now slept on the far edge of a king-size mattress. The woman who used to steal my t-shirts now had her own walk-in closet full of clothes I'd never seen her wear at home. The woman who used to be my best friend now felt like a stranger who happened to share my address. "How long?" I asked. "How long what?" How long have you been planning this conversation? She looked away, and I had my answer. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment realization. This was a prepared statement, probably rehearsed in front of the bathroom mirror or workshopped with her girlfriends over lunch. I think we both know this has been coming for a while, she said. Do we? Don't make this harder than it has to be, Dave. Harder than it has to be. As if the dissolution of nearly 2 decades together was just another item on her to-do list, something to be managed efficiently and crossed off. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Rachel's house. Her bedroom light was on, and I could see her silhouette moving around, probably getting ready for bed. A simple, uncomplicated routine. When had my life become so complicated? There's someone else, I said. It wasn't a question. The silence behind me stretched long enough to be an answer. It's not like that, Marta finally said. Then what is it like? It's like finding out who I am again, like remembering what it feels like to be wanted instead of just needed. I turned back to face her. She was crying now, but they weren't the tears of someone who was sorry. They were the tears of someone who felt guilty about not being sorry enough. Who is he? Dave, who is he? Greg Matheson. The name hit me like a physical blow. Greg Matheson, real estate agent, gym rat, divorced father of 2. The guy who'd been at our barbecue tonight, laughing at his wife's jokes about trading me away. The guy who'd helped himself to my beer and my food while sleeping with my wife behind my back. How long? 3 months. 3 months. 90 days of lies, of fake smiles at dinner, of her coming home late from work meetings and girls' nights out. 90 days of me being the punchline of a joke I didn't even know was being told. I want you to leave, I said. Dave, we should talk about this. No, we're done talking. Pack a bag and get out. She stood there for a moment, and I could see her weighing her options. The smart play would be to fight, to try to salvage something, to at least attempt to look like she gave a damn about what we'd built together. Instead, she nodded. I'll stay at Candace's tonight. We can figure out the details later. Candace, her work friend, the one who'd been giving me knowing looks all evening. How many of them knew? How many of my neighbors had been watching me play the fool while my wife auditioned for her next act? After she left, I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my kitchen, staring at the leftover coleslaw and potato salad from the barbecue. The house felt different already. Not emptier, exactly, but cleaner somehow. Like a weight had been lifted. I thought about Rachel's offer, made in jest but delivered with just enough sincerity to make me wonder. Maybe Marta was right about one thing. Maybe it was time to figure out who I was outside of this marriage. Maybe it was time to stop being the reliable, steady, house-trained husband and start being something else entirely. I raised my glass to the empty kitchen. Here's to new beginnings, I said to no one. Outside, the wind picked up, and I could smell the lingering smoke from the barbecue. Tomorrow, I'd start cleaning up the mess. Tonight, I'd just sit with the wreckage and plan my next move. Because if there's one thing 18 years of marriage had taught me, it was this. Every ending is just another beginning in disguise, and I was ready to begin. The security camera arrived 2 days after Marta moved out. Amazon Prime, God bless it. The enabler of suburban surveillance and impulse purchases made during 3 a.m. bourbon sessions. I told myself I was being paranoid, but paranoid people are just people who pay attention. I installed the camera in the garage, disguised as a Wi-Fi extender. 23 years in IT project management had taught me a few things about making technology invisible. The garage was where Marta used to take her private calls, the ones that always ended abruptly when I walked in. 3 days of footage yielded nothing but me taking out the trash and Mrs. Patterson from next door walking her neurotic poodle. Then, on Thursday afternoon, while I was at work, I hit the jackpot. Greg Matheson's silver BMW pulled into my driveway at 2:17 p.m. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, got out of the passenger seat, laughing at something he'd said. They went into the garage through the side door, the one that didn't require them to walk past any windows where the neighbors might see. I fast-forwarded through 43 minutes of empty garage footage, then watched them emerge, Marta smoothing down her skirt, Greg adjusting his belt. They stood by his car for another few minutes, talking in low voices. The camera's audio wasn't great, but I caught enough. Thinks I'm at Candace's. Such a loser. Divorce papers next week. Everything we planned. Everything we planned. So this wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. I saved the video files to 3 different drives and emailed copies to myself. In my line of work, you learn that redundancy is the difference between having proof and having regrets. The next morning, I called in sick and drove to Greg's office. Matheson Realty occupied a strip mall space between a nail salon and a Subway, the kind of place that screamed, barely making it, despite Greg's expensive suits and leased BMW. I parked across the street and watched him through the window, talking on his phone with exaggerated gestures. Everything about him was performance. The way he held his coffee cup, the way he laughed too loud at his own jokes, the way he'd probably performed concern and sympathy while listening to Marta complain about her marriage. My phone buzzed. Text from Marta. Can we meet for coffee? We need to discuss logistics. Logistics. Even our divorce was being managed with corporate efficiency. I texted back, Starbucks on 5th, 1 hour. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner booth we used to share on Saturday mornings when we still pretended to enjoy each other's company. She'd ordered me a medium coffee, black, the way I'd been drinking it for 18 years. The gesture felt like muscle memory rather than consideration. You look tired, she said. I wonder why. She had the grace to look uncomfortable. Dave, I know this is hard. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks pretty easy for you. You've got your exit strategy, your new guy, your work friends providing alibis. What's hard about that? It's not like that. Then explain it to me. Explain how 3 months of lying to my face while sleeping with another man in our garage isn't exactly like that. She flinched. Good. I wanted her to flinch. I never meant for it to happen, she said. But you meant for it to continue. You meant to plan it. You meant to coordinate your stories with Candace. You meant to use our home as your personal intimate pad while I was at work paying for it. Keep your voice down. Why? Embarrassed? That's interesting, considering you weren't too embarrassed to auction me off to the neighbors last weekend. She leaned forward, and I caught a whiff of her perfume. The expensive stuff she only wore for special occasions. Apparently, coffee with her husband didn't qualify, but afternoons with Greg did. I want this to be amicable, she said. Amicable. I tasted the word like it was something bitter. You want to blow up our marriage and have me smile about it. You want to humiliate me in front of our friends and neighbors, then shake hands and walk away clean. That's not how this works, Marta. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to realize that 18 years of marriage doesn't just disappear because you found someone who makes you feel young again. I want you to face the fact that you're not the victim here. She was quiet for a long moment, stirring her latte with mechanical precision. When she finally looked up, there was something different in her eyes. Not guilt, but calculation. Fine, she said. If you want to make this ugly, we can make it ugly. But remember, you're not the only one with secrets, Dave. What's that supposed to mean? She smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen on her face. It means you might want to think carefully about how far you want to push this, glass houses and all that. She left me sitting there with 2 cups of coffee and the distinct feeling that I'd just been threatened. What secrets could she possibly have on me? I'd been the faithful one, the reliable one, the one who came home every night and asked about her day like I actually gave a damn about the answer. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to figure out what she meant, but came up empty. Unless she was talking about the time I'd kissed Sarah Chen from accounting at the Christmas party 5 years ago. And that had lasted about 3 seconds before I'd pulled away and spent the rest of the night avoiding her. By evening, I'd convinced myself it was a bluff. Marta was good at her job because she understood leverage, and threatening someone was just another form of negotiation. The problem was, she'd forgotten that I understood leverage too. I pulled up the garage footage again and watched Greg adjust his belt, watched Marta smooth her skirt, watched them laugh about what a loser I was. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. If Marta wanted to play hardball, I'd show her what hardball looked like. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. 3 months of an affair was one thing. 3 months of planning and coordination suggested something more elaborate. I opened Marta's laptop. She'd never changed the password from our anniversary date, which was either sloppy or cruel, and started digging. Her email was a treasure trove of coordination with Candace and Britt, her other work friend. They'd been covering for her, providing alibis, even helping her shop for lingerie I'd never seen. The most damning email was from 2 weeks ago. D is getting suspicious, might need to accelerate timeline. G says his lawyer can fast-track everything if we move quickly. Timeline. Lawyer. Fast-track. This wasn't just an affair. It was a hostile takeover of my life, planned and executed with the same efficiency Marta brought to her advertising campaigns. I screenshot everything, saved it all, and started planning my response. If they wanted to treat this like a business transaction, I'd show them what happened when you tried to screw over someone who understood systems and processes better than they did. The game had changed. Marta thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to learn that I'd been playing chess all along. I'd just been letting her think she was winning. Rachel Matthews was watering her roses when I walked over with a bottle of wine the next evening. She looked up from her garden hose with raised eyebrows. Dave Heller bearing gifts. Should I be worried? Depends. How serious was that trade offer at the barbecue? She turned off the hose and gave me her full attention. Rachel was 40, divorced for 2 years, with the kind of direct gaze that made you feel like she could see through bullshit from a mile away. Her ex-husband had been a controlling asshole who'd tried to isolate her from her friends. The divorce had been messy, but she'd come out of it stronger and considerably less willing to tolerate anyone's crap. Serious enough, she said. Why? You finally ready to take me up on it? Marta moved out 3 days ago. Ah. She took the wine and read the label. Good vintage. Come on, let's sit on the deck and you can tell me what happened. Her backyard was a masterpiece of landscaping, something she'd thrown herself into after the divorce. We sat on her deck with glasses of the wine, watching the sun set behind the maple trees that bordered our properties. So she's been cheating, Rachel said after I'd given her the abbreviated version. With Greg Matheson? You don't sound surprised. I'm not. I saw them together at the grocery store last month. Too much touching for people who were just friends. Plus, Candace has been giving you these pitying looks every time she sees you. Dead giveaway. How long has everyone known? Not everyone, just the people who pay attention. She sipped her wine and studied me over the rim of her glass. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm still figuring that out. Well, while you're figuring, you're welcome to stay here if you need space from the house. I've got a guest room, and honestly, the company would be nice. I looked at her, really looked. Rachel had always been attractive, but there was something different about her now, a confidence that hadn't been there when she was married. Her blonde hair was shorter than it used to be, and she'd traded her old conservative wardrobe for clothes that actually fit her personality. That's a generous offer. It's a practical offer. You help me with the yard work, I help you figure out how to handle your wife's midlife crisis. Besides, she grinned, it would drive Marta absolutely insane. That's not exactly mature. Maturity is overrated. Sometimes the best response to someone treating you like garbage is to show them what they're losing. She had a point. Marta's whole power play depended on me being the reliable, predictable husband who would quietly accept whatever she decided to do. What if I stopped being that person? There's something else, I said. I think this whole thing is more planned than she's letting on. I found emails between her and her friends. They've been coordinating this for months. Rachel's expression hardened. What kind of coordination? I told her about the emails, the timeline references, the mention of lawyers. By the time I finished, she was leaning forward with the intensity of someone who'd been through her own divorce war. Dave, listen to me carefully. If she's been planning this for months, she's already moved money, documented everything she wants to use against you, and probably has a narrative ready about why the marriage failed that makes her the victim. You need to get ahead of this. How? First, document everything. Every conversation, every text, every interaction. Second, secure your finances. Separate accounts, change passwords, the works. Third, stop playing defense and start playing offense. Meaning stop reacting to what she does and start making her react to what you do. We talked until nearly midnight, planning and strategizing. Rachel had learned hard lessons during her own divorce, and she was more than willing to share them. By the time I walked back to my house, I had a plan. The next morning, I implemented phase 1. I opened new accounts at a different bank and transferred half of our savings, my legal right as a joint account holder. I changed the passwords on all our shared accounts and services. I documented every asset, every debt, every financial detail of our marriage. Then I called Greg's office. Matheson Realty, this is Greg. Greg, this is Dave Heller. I think we need to talk. Silence. Then, Dave, Look, I know this is awkward. Awkward? I laughed. Greg, you've been sleeping with my wife in my garage for 3 months. Awkward doesn't begin to cover it. But I'm not calling to fight. I'm calling to give you some friendly advice. What kind of advice? The kind that might save your business. See, I've been thinking about this situation, and I realized something. Marta's not just cheating on me. She's cheating with you. And if she'll cheat with you, she'll cheat on you. That's just who she is now. I don't think... Here's the thing, Greg. I know about the timeline. I know about the lawyers. I know this whole thing has been planned from the beginning. And I'm wondering if you know what happens to your real estate license when word gets out that you're the kind of guy who helps married women plan their divorces while sleeping with them in their husband's garage. Another silence. Longer this time. What do you want? He finally asked. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to think about whether Marta is worth losing everything you've built. And I want you to remember this conversation when things start getting complicated. I hung up before he could respond. Phase 2 happened that afternoon. I drove to Morrison & Associates and waited in the parking lot until Candace came out for her smoke break. She saw me approaching and tried to duck back inside, but I was faster. Hello, Candace. Dave, hi. Marta said that she's leaving me for Greg? Yeah, she mentioned that. What she didn't mention was how long you've been helping her plan it. Candace's face went pale. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. The alibis, the cover stories, the shopping trips for lingerie she never wore home. You've been a very good friend, Candace. The question is, does your husband know what kind of friend you've been? You can't... Can't what? Can't tell him that his wife has been helping another woman cheat on her husband? Can't mention that you've been lying to me for months? Can't suggest that if you're willing to help someone else destroy their marriage, maybe he should wonder what you're capable of in your own? She was shaking now. Good. Please, Dave. It wasn't my idea. Marta just needed someone to talk to. Marta needed someone to help her plan my humiliation. There's a difference. But here's what's going to happen, Candace. You're going to stop helping her. You're going to stop lying for her. And you're going to start thinking about whether your friendship with her is worth your marriage to Tom. I left her standing there in the parking lot, probably calculating whether she had enough time to get home and confess before I could call her husband. The answer was no, but I'd let her figure that out on her own. Phase 3 was the most important. That evening, I packed a bag and walked over to Rachel's house. "Ready for that trade?" I asked when she answered the door. She smiled. "Thought you'd never ask." I moved into Rachel's guest room that night, and by morning, the whole neighborhood knew about it. Mrs. Patterson made sure of that, walking her poodle past Rachel's house 3 times before 8 a.m. and stopping to chat with anyone who'd listen. When Marta called, furious, I was ready for her. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "I'm taking you up on your offer," I said. "Remember? At the barbecue? You wanted to trade me to Rachel for a bottle of wine. Well, she's upgraded the offer. Now I'm getting a home-cooked meal and someone who actually enjoys my company. Seems like a good deal to me." "This is ridiculous. You're making a fool of yourself." "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm the guy who figured out his wife was cheating and decided to do something about it, instead of just taking it lying down. That doesn't sound foolish to me. That sounds smart." The silence on the other end told me she was recalculating, trying to figure out how I'd gone from predictable to unpredictable overnight. "We need to talk," she finally said. "No, we don't. We need to get divorced. Everything else is just details." I hung up and looked out Rachel's kitchen window at my own house, dark and empty across the yard. For the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The game had officially begun. Greg Matheson's gym was one of those aggressively masculine places where men went to pretend they were still 25. All black equipment, loud music, and mirrors everywhere, so you couldn't escape the reality of what time and poor choices had done to your body. I'd never set foot in the place before, but I'd done my research. Greg worked out every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. before his real estate appointments. Creatures of habit make the best targets. I arrived at 5:45, signed up for a day pass, and positioned myself at the free weights where I could watch the locker room entrance. Greg arrived right on schedule, already dressed in workout gear that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. He saw me immediately, hard to miss in a place where everyone knew everyone else. His step faltered for just a moment before he continued toward the locker room, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. I gave him 10 minutes to get settled, then followed him in. The locker room was empty except for us and one old guy who was taking his sweet time getting dressed. Greg was sitting on the bench, lacing up his training shoes with unnecessary concentration. "Morning, Greg." He looked up, and I saw the exact moment he decided to try playing it off like we were just 2 guys who happened to run into each other. "Dave, hey, what brings you here? Didn't know you were a member." "I'm not. Just trying some new things. You know how it is when your life suddenly opens up with new possibilities." The old guy finished dressing and left, and suddenly we were alone. The silence stretched between us, filled only by the distant sound of weights clanking and cardio machines humming. "Look, Dave," Greg started, "about Marta." "What about her?" "I know this is awkward, and I want you to know that we never meant for it to happen this way." "Which way did you mean for it to happen? The way where you don't get caught, or the way where I'm supposed to be grateful that you're taking her off my hands?" He stood up, trying to use his height advantage. Greg was about 3 inches taller than me, and probably 30 pounds heavier, most of it muscle. In his mind, that probably made this conversation easier. "I think we should keep this civil," he said. "Civil." I stepped closer, close enough that he had to look down to meet my eyes. "You've been sleeping with my wife in my garage for 3 months, helping her plan our divorce, and calling me a loser behind my back. But you want to keep things civil." "I never said—" "You never said I was a loser? Interesting, because I have video of you saying exactly that. Tuesday afternoon, 2:47 p.m., standing next to your BMW in my driveway." The color drained from his face. "You've been recording us?" "I've been recording my own property. What you and my wife chose to do there is your business. But here's the thing, Greg. It's about to become everyone else's business, too. I reached into my gym bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Photos, video timestamps, license plate numbers, even some audio. Amazing what technology can do these days. His hands were shaking as he reached for the envelope, but I pulled it back. That's just a sample. The full collection is much more extensive, and it's already been backed up in several locations, just in case something happens to me. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly. You think you're getting a prize, but you're really getting a problem. Marta didn't leave me because she fell in love with you. She left me because she got bored, and you were convenient. When she gets bored with you, and she will, she'll do the same thing to you that she did to me. It's not what? Not true? Greg, she's been lying to me for 3 months. She's been lying to our kids, our friends, our neighbors. What makes you think she's telling you the truth? I sat down on the bench where he'd been sitting, making him stand over me like a supplicant. But here's what's really going to happen. Word is going to get out about this. It always does. And when it does, people are going to remember that you're the real estate agent who helps married women cheat on their husbands. They're going to wonder what other ethical boundaries you're willing to cross. They're going to ask themselves if they really want to trust you with the biggest financial transaction of their lives. You can't destroy my business over this. I don't have to destroy anything. I just have to let people know who you really are. The market will take care of the rest. I stood up and walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Greg, next time you want to call someone a loser, make sure you're not doing it on their property. It's just good manners. I left him standing there in his expensive workout clothes, holding nothing but the realization that his life had just gotten much more complicated. The rest of my plan unfolded over the next week with the precision of a well-managed project. I'd learned a lot about systems and processes over the years, and destroying someone's reputation was just another kind of system. First, I made sure the right people saw Rachel and me together. We went to dinner at the Italian place where Marta and I used to eat. We went grocery shopping together, laughing and talking like people who actually enjoyed each other's company. We took walks around the neighborhood, holding hands like teenagers. The effect was immediate and exactly what I'd hoped for. Within 3 days, I had neighbors stopping by to tell me how happy I looked, how good it was to see me moving on, how they'd always thought Rachel and I would make a good couple. Mrs. Patterson was particularly enthusiastic. That Marta never appreciated you, she told me while I was checking my mail. Always thought she was too good for the rest of us. But Rachel, now there's a woman who knows quality when she sees it. The second phase was more subtle. I started a whisper campaign, nothing dramatic or obviously malicious. Just strategic conversations with the right people. I mentioned to Bob from across the street that I'd heard Greg was having some financial troubles. Wasn't that his BMW getting repossessed last week? Bob hadn't seen any repo, but he'd keep an eye out. I told Susan that I'd heard Greg's ex-wife was taking him back to court for more child support, something about hidden assets. Susan was the neighborhood's information hub, and she'd make sure that rumor spread. I let slip to Tony at work that Greg had some kind of gambling problem. Wasn't that why his first marriage fell apart? Tony would tell his wife, who would tell her book club, who would tell their husbands. None of it was true, but none of it was disprovable either. And in a small community like ours, perception was reality. The third phase was the most satisfying. I started showing up at Greg's open houses. The first one was a colonial on Maple Street. I arrived early, before the other potential buyers, and introduced myself to the young couple Greg was working with. You're thinking of buying in this neighborhood? That's great. I live just a few streets over. Love it here, though you do have to be careful about property values. Some of the real estate agents around here have reputations that can affect resale. I didn't mention Greg by name. I didn't have to. When he walked over to join the conversation, the couple suddenly remembered they had another appointment. The second open house went even better. I brought Rachel with me, and we played the part of a happy couple looking to upgrade. We asked detailed questions about the property, the neighborhood, the local schools. We were charming and engaged, and exactly the kind of buyers any agent would want. Right up until the moment I mentioned that we'd heard some concerning things about the agent's professional ethics. Nothing specific, I said. Just rumors about inappropriate relationships with clients. Probably nothing, but in a transaction this big, you want to make sure you're working with someone you can trust completely. Greg's face went red, but what could he say? Deny it too strongly, and he'd look guilty. Ignore it, and the potential buyers would assume it was true. We left without making an offer, and so did everyone else who'd been there. By the end of the week, Greg's business was hemorrhaging clients. Candace was sleeping on her sister's couch after her husband kicked her out, and Marta was fielding questions from her boss about why her personal life was affecting her professional reputation. The best part was that none of it could be traced back to me. I hadn't lied about anyone. I hadn't done anything illegal. I'd simply made sure that the truth about their characters became public knowledge and let the consequences play out naturally. On Friday evening, Rachel and I were sitting on her deck, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sun set, when my phone rang. Marta's name on the caller ID. "Don't answer it," Rachel said. "I should. She's probably ready to negotiate." "Dave." Rachel put her hand on mine. "You're winning. Don't give her a chance to regroup." She was right. I let the call go to voicemail and pulled Rachel closer to me on the porch swing. Across the yard, my old house sat dark and empty, a monument to a marriage that had died long before I'd been willing to admit it. But here, in Rachel's arms, watching the stars come out over a neighborhood that was finally starting to see me as something other than Marta's reliable husband, I felt more alive than I had in years. The game was far from over, but for the first time, I was playing to win. The email arrived on Monday morning while I was having coffee on Rachel's deck. The subject line read, "Final settlement offer." Marta's lawyer had crafted it with the cold efficiency of someone who specialized in dismantling lives. She wanted the house, half my retirement account, alimony for 5 years, and her legal fees covered. In exchange, I'd get my car, my personal belongings, and the privilege of starting over at 43 with nothing to show for 18 years of marriage. I forwarded the email to Rachel, who read it over her own coffee and laughed. "She's delusional," Rachel said. "After everything that's happened, she thinks she can still dictate terms? She's desperate. Greg's business is tanking, Candace won't return her calls, and word is getting around about the affair. She needs money and she needs it fast. So what's your counteroffer?" I smiled. "I don't have one. I'm not negotiating." Instead, I spent Monday morning implementing the final phase of my plan. If Marta wanted to play hardball, I'd show her what hardball actually looked like. First stop, Morrison and Associates. I'd called ahead and made an appointment with Richard Morrison, the agency's founder and CEO. He was an old-school businessman who'd built his reputation on family values and community involvement. The kind of man who wouldn't appreciate learning that one of his senior executives had been conducting a very public affair. Morrison's office was all dark wood and leather, designed to project stability and trustworthiness. He greeted me with the kind of firm handshake that said he was used to making important decisions quickly. "Mr. Heller, I understand you wanted to discuss a delicate matter regarding one of our employees." "That's right. It concerns Marta Heller, my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife." I laid out the situation with the same methodical approach I used for project presentations. The affair, the planning, the use of company time and resources to coordinate personal business. I showed him printed emails between Marta and Candace, discussing alibis and cover stories. I showed him credit card receipts for hotel rooms charged to the company account. Morrison's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. "Mr. Heller, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. Morrison and Associates has always prided itself on maintaining the highest ethical standards, both professionally and personally. This kind of behavior reflects poorly on our entire organization. I'm not looking to destroy anyone's career, I lied smoothly. I just thought you should be aware of the situation, given that it's becoming rather public knowledge. Public knowledge? Well, you know how these things go. People talk. And when they talk about affairs and deception, they tend to remember where the people involved work. It can affect business relationships, client trust, that sort of thing. Morrison nodded grimly. He understood exactly what I was saying. Second stop, Greg's ex-wife. Jennifer Matheson lived in a tidy ranch house across town with their 2 teenage kids. She'd been screwed over in their divorce settlement and had been fighting for increased child support for months. I found her in her front yard, wrestling with a lawnmower that had seen better days. Mrs. Matheson, I'm Dave Heller. I think we have a mutual problem. She looked up, wiping sweat from her forehead. If this is about Greg, I don't want to hear it. I've got enough problems with that man. Actually, I think I might be able to help with some of those problems. I told her about Greg's affair with Marta, about the planning and coordination, about the timeline for their divorce. Jennifer listened with the expression of someone who was familiar with Greg's capacity for deception, but was still learning new depths to it. So he's been planning to leave his current situation for months, she said when I finished. That suggests he's been hiding assets, preparing for financial changes, the kind of thing that might affect child support calculations. That's exactly what I was thinking. And if someone were to request a forensic accounting of his finances during this period, they might find some very interesting discrepancies. Jennifer smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Mr. Heller, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Third stop, the neighborhood itself. I'd lived here for 8 years, and I knew exactly how information flowed through the community. Mrs. Patterson was the primary distribution hub, but there were several other key nodes in the network. I spent Tuesday afternoon making casual visits, ostensibly to thank people for their support during my difficult time. But each conversation included carefully placed information about Marta and Greg's behavior, their disrespect for marriage and community values, their willingness to lie and deceive people who trusted them. By Wednesday, the Whisper campaign had become a full-scale information war. Marta couldn't show her face at the grocery store without getting cold stares. Greg had been quietly dropped from the country club's membership committee. Candace had been asked to take a leave of absence from her position on the school board. The beauty of it was that I didn't have to do anything actively malicious. I just had to make sure people knew the truth, and their own moral judgments took care of the rest. Thursday morning brought a phone call from Marta. She was crying. Dave, please, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Has it? I don't think it's gone nearly far enough. My job is in jeopardy. Greg's lost 3 major clients this week. Candace is talking about leaving town. You're destroying people's lives. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making sure people know who they're really dealing with. Actions have consequences, Marta. You taught me that. What do you want? Money? The house? I'll give you whatever you want. Just make this stop. I don't want anything from you. I want you to understand what it feels like to have your life turned upside down by someone you trusted. I want you to know what it's like to be humiliated in front of people whose opinions matter to you. I want you to experience the same sense of powerlessness you put me through. I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but this isn't the way to handle it. This is exactly the way to handle it. You made a choice to betray our marriage, and now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. Just like I had to live with the consequences of trusting you. I hung up and immediately called Rachel. She's ready to surrender, I told her. Are you ready to accept? That was the question, wasn't it? I'd spent weeks systematically destroying the lives of everyone who'd betrayed me. I'd turned their own community against them, ruined their professional relationships, and made them social pariahs. I'd won completely and decisively, but winning felt different than I'd expected. It felt empty. I don't know, I admitted. Dave, you've made your point. Everyone knows what they did, and everyone knows you're not someone to be messed with. Maybe it's time to think about what comes next. What came next? For weeks, I'd been so focused on revenge that I hadn't thought about what I actually wanted my life to look like afterward. Did I want to spend the rest of my time in this neighborhood, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage and the people I'd destroyed? Did I want to be known forever as the guy who'd gotten his revenge? Or did I want to be known as the guy who'd built something better? There's one more thing I need to do, I said. Friday evening, I organized a neighborhood barbecue. Not at my house, that would have been too obvious, but in the community park at the center of our subdivision. I sent invitations to everyone, including Marta, Greg, and Candace. Most people came out of curiosity. They wanted to see what would happen when all the players in our little drama were forced into the same space. They wanted to witness the final act of the show I'd been putting on for weeks. I set up a projector and a screen, ostensibly for showing a slideshow of neighborhood events from the past year. But when the sun went down and I started the presentation, the first image wasn't from a block party or a holiday celebration. It was a still frame from the garage security video, showing Marta and Greg in an embrace. The crowd went silent. Someone gasped. I heard Marta whisper, "Oh my God," from somewhere behind me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, addressing the crowd like I was giving a corporate presentation. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I thought it was time we all had an honest conversation about what's been happening in our community." I clicked to the next slide. Email screenshots showing the planning and coordination between Marta, Greg, and Candace. You see, some of our neighbors have been living double lives. They've been lying to their spouses, their friends, and their community while presenting themselves as upstanding citizens. Another click. Financial records showing Greg's hidden assets and Marta's misuse of company resources. They've been stealing from their employers, hiding money from their ex-spouses, and generally demonstrating that they believe the rules that govern the rest of us don't apply to them. I could hear movement behind me, probably Marta, Greg, and Candace trying to leave. But the crowd had formed a natural barrier around them. Nobody was stopping them exactly, but nobody was making it easy for them to escape either. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This is between them and their families. This is private business that shouldn't be aired in public, and normally I'd agree with you. Final click. A photo of all of us at the original barbecue, the one where Marta had offered to trade me away. But these people made it public when they decided to humiliate me in front of all of you. They made it community business when they involved our neighbors in their lies and deceptions. They made it everyone's problem when they showed that they have no respect for the values that hold a community together. I turned off the projector and faced the crowd. So here's what's going to happen. These three people are going to leave our neighborhood. They're going to find somewhere else to live, work, and spread their poison. And the rest of us are going to move on with our lives, secure in the knowledge that we don't tolerate people who think they're better than the commitments they make. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Then slowly, people started to applaud. It started with Mrs. Patterson, spread to Bob and Susan, and eventually included nearly everyone there. Everyone except Marta, Greg, and Candace, who stood frozen in the middle of the crowd like deer caught in headlights. "The show's over," I announced. "Time for everyone to go home." As the crowd dispersed, the three conspirators hurried away without a word. I watched them go, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and something that might have been pity. Rachel appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. "Feel better?" she asked. "Feel finished," I said. And I did. The anger that had been driving me for weeks was gone, replaced by something cleaner and more hopeful. I'd gotten my revenge, but more importantly, I'd gotten my life back. 6 months later, Marta, Greg, and Candace had all left town. Marta found a job with a smaller agency in another state. Greg sold his business and moved back to his hometown. Candace reconciled with her husband, but they relocated to give their marriage a fresh start. I sold my house and moved in with Rachel permanently. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony in her backyard, surrounded by neighbors who'd become genuine friends. The funny thing about revenge is that it's supposed to be a dish best served cold. But sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well and letting the people who wronged you live with the consequences of their choices. Though I have to admit, watching them squirm first was pretty satisfying too.